Hey everyone, this is Steve, back with part 3 to our modern interior tutorial series in Blender. So when we left off, we just finished the staircase and the windows and doors, and now it's kind of like an empty shell with no furniture or nothing. It looks like someone just moved out. So we need to start adding in some of the furniture, starting with the television here, and we'll add some shelving over here, and maybe some shelves on the walls to kind of finish it out and add some of the details. Alright, so we'll start with the television set that's kind of mounted on this pole over here, as you saw in my final render. So let's start off by just adding in the television, because that'll be fun and easy. It'll just be Shift A, adding in a plane. We can rotate this 90 degrees along the x-axis. And we're going to scale it up a little bit, and then we want to go widescreen, so we'll scale it along the y a bit, or x, until we have, a pretty fancy looking television there. We can kind of position it as a little bit off to the side, kind of like there's a mounting bracket probably coming off the pole there. Right around here actually is pretty good. And we're going to want to give it a little bit of thickness. And we're going to want to give it a little bit of a curved screen, because I think that would be cool. So let's go ahead and tab into edit mode and go Control R, hovering over the center there, and then scroll our wheel till we have a handful of vertices there with one in the center. So I'm going about 7 cuts right there. So just go ahead and click. And then we're going to grab that middle edge, and we're going to turn on proportional editing, and we'll leave that smooth. And then, hold on, let's change this to be sphere. Now we can kind of, nope, not sphere. Let me see here, sharp. Nope. You kind of have to play around with these to find the one you're looking for exactly. I think it's maybe the root. Let's see what that one does. No, not cool. Actually, yeah, that'll be good. So we're going to use the root proportional editing fall off, and just going to kind of pull it back until you get kind of a nice curved display. Something like that looks pretty fancy. We can enable smooth shading on it. We can pull it out a little bit more now, and we'll give it some thickness as well. So I'm going to tab into edit mode, grab everything, and extrude it forward a bit. Something like that looks to be about right. And then usually it's a little skinnier on the edges, so if you want to be fancy, you grab some of the edge vertices there and kind of pull them in a little bit tighter. We don't need proportional editing, so you can hit O and disable that. Pull those in a little tighter, and then maybe the next row too, back there, we can pull those in a little tighter. Maybe go a little more even. Make it a little bit more of a thin bezel. And that looks to be pretty good. So there's our widescreen television set. And now let's kind of add the stereo box down here with the speakers and sort of the Blu-ray player and whatnot. So this is going to be kind of an interesting shape. It's, well, let's just start creating it. It's kind of a platform that carries the 2 speakers and then the stereo box. So we can go ahead and add in a cube, and we'll scale it along the z-axis a bit. Something pretty thin. All right, and then it'll be down a little bit shorter here. I'm going to go to front view and then hit 5 on my number pad to go into orthographic view. Scale it a little bit more. We'll kind of pull it over to the right and scale it along the x-axis a bit. This is going to be pretty much the same width as the monitor, or the TV. So we'll scale it up a bit like that. And that looks pretty good. Now this is going to be mirrored, so we only have to work on one side, and the same side will be done on the other side, if you know what I mean. So we're going to go ahead and go Control R, put a cut in the center there, and then we can go vertices select, grab those, hit X, and delete those vertices. And if we enable the mirror modifier now, just go mirror or modifiers and mirror, we can have that back. So enable clipping, and now all we have to do is work on one side. So I'm going to grab that face and pull it in a little bit, go to front view, and the edges are kind of curved upwards a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and extrude this, pull it out a bit, and then pull it up. So we get kind of that sort of look. Except I don't want this bottom edge here to be kind of turned like that. I want it to be pointed. If you know what I mean, I'll just show you. You're going to rotate it so that I have straight edge straight across like that. And that should do it. Just kind of rotating it like that. So we have sort of that pointed edge. Now this won't be pointed because the speakers kind of fit right in there. So that is basically the way the design that I'm following works, or looks, I should say. So I'm going to add another loop cut. We'll pull it over to about here, where the speakers will start. And then I'm going to go face select, grab this face and this face, front view again, and we're going to Shift D, so we can move them just a tad. We don't really need to move them much. And then we're going to extrude it upwards. All right. Now we can take these and scale them along the Z to 0 to straighten that out. And then we want to scale the edges along the X to 0 to square that up as well. Okay. And that is looking about right. They're way too long, obviously, so we can scale the whole object along the y-axis to make that a little bit tighter. Let's kind of scale these in a little bit along the X by pulling that in and making it just a little smaller. It's a little bit big right now. I can scale everything then along the X a bit, pull these in a little bit tighter. Okay, that's looking pretty good. It looks not too shabby. We can grab this edge here now, right there, and pull that in a little tighter there. So that looks a little cleaner. All right, I'm liking the way this looks. Now we might want to set the speakers back just a little bit over the sort of table there to give a little bit of dimension to it. And then I'm going to grab the back of the speakers and pull them in a little closer. Okay, and then I'm going to go Control R and put a cut on that bottom floor just beyond the end of the speakers there. So I can grab those faces behind it, kind of pan around here with my middle mouse wheel so you can see a little better. All right. And then I can extrude those up along the Z axis. And then we'll scale along the Z to 0 to kind of center that out. Nice. Now we can make our speakers a little shorter as well, because those are a little big. But that's looking pretty good. This whole thing needs to be set back a little further. And we can, is smooth shading enabled on that? Yes, it is. All right, and we can pull this back just about so. So it's behind the pole there. Okay. So that is the base shape. I'll scale it all up a little, Z a little bit. The base shape for the speaker system. I'm just dropping it and scaling it a little bit there. And that, we can scale along the X a little bit more too. That is the basics of it. Now we can kind of move on to some of the cool details like, oh, first off, I think it's a little bit tall. There we go. A little narrower would be better. Okay. And then maybe scale the whole thing just a tad on its own. All right, so we can kind of go ahead and put the speaker, what do you call it? Grills. Not the right word, but you probably know what I mean by it. The grills on the front. So that's kind of cool, and we're going to use the Boolean modifier to kind of cut a hole in our mesh to put our speaker holes on. So I'm going to go ahead and go Shift A, and we're going to add in a cylinder, and we'll just scale that down. Rotate it 90 degrees along the x-axis. Scale it up a little bit more now. Place it right about there. And then we'll select the mesh here and go add modifier Boolean. And then we're going to select our cylinder here and add modifier Boolean. And this is going to be, actually we don't need it on both. I'm sorry, we only need it on here. We choose our object cylinder. And then we want to change it to, is it difference? Let me see here. Yes, change it to difference. And then if we hide this, you can see we have cut a hole in our mesh. So it's super cool and an easy way to get some nice modeling in without actually doing the detailed work. So I can go ahead and hit Alt-H to unhide that, and we can tab at Edit Mode, Shift D, and pull that down for the second speaker on bottom there. Something like that. And then if I go hiding them again, you can see we have two cuts. That's exactly what I want. So that's perfect. And I can take this then, if I go Option H, and I can duplicate it. And I'm not actually positive if I have to apply the modifier first or not. Let's see if that works, just doing that. Actually, wait a minute. I'm going to have to do it in Edit Mode, of course. So tab to Edit Mode, grab those, Shift D, and pull them over. And we'll see. If I hide them, It is working. Perfect. So just duplicate them over there, and we can cut the hole in there as well. As long as it's second in the modifier stack, I imagine. If it's above it, well, actually, I guess it works both ways. Cool. Okay, so I can unhide it now with Option H. And, okay, actually, I have some duplicates here. Delete the duplicates. We only want that. Okay, cool. And now I'm going to go ahead and add the kind of grill face to them. So let me save my project here real quick. And for the grill, I came up with a design that was really quick and easy, and it's just using a UV sphere. So I'll go Shift-A, add in UV sphere. We'll rotate it 90 degrees along the x-axis, and we'll scale it down so it fits right about inside there. Let's go front view, just to make sure it's right around inside that circle, which it is. So that's perfect. I'll hit period to kind of zoom in on it, and then I'll hit Z to be able to see through it. Now I'm going to scale along the y-axis to kind of flatten it out a bit, pull it up a bit more, and then I'm going to go vertices select and grab all of the back vertices here and hit X and delete vertices. So we have just that sort of face there. I can scale it down a little bit more now. So it's kind of stuck inside there. And then we're going to add a modifier wireframe. And pretty much just tweak the scale of the wireframe there. Something like so. And then I want to choose, where is it? Not to replace the original. So we have both of them there, because I thought that looked a little better. And you can pull it forward a little bit more now. And you kind of have the grill-like thing that you're looking for. You can choose relative thickness. Is that better? Yeah, relative thickness looks a little better. And then scale it up a little bit more. Without the relative thickness, it's okay, yeah. And then scale it up a little bit more, and that looks to be pretty good. Awesome. So now what I can do is I can add another modifier. We'll make this an array modifier. We'll push this one over to the right, just far enough to be right in the right spot there. That's pretty close, maybe 0.38. This will depend on your scene a little bit, but just line it up till it's right in the spot there. We'll add one more array modifier. And this one is going to be along the z-axis here. So along the bottom, I'm going to go 1. We can 0 that out. And then we just want to pull it down. I'm sorry, this is not the right axis, the middle one here. The y-axis is what we're going to use. And you're going to pull it down right about so, a little bit less, 0.05. Maybe 0.06 would be better. And that is that. So that looks pretty good. And once they have materials on them and stuff, it will just give a little bit of extra dimension to them to make it look good. So that's that. And we can move on to the stereo system now. So I'm going to go ahead and save my project. So the stereo box is really simple. It's actually kind of hard to see in the scene here, but it's basically what you'd imagine a typical sort of stereo box with a Bluetooth thing set up on top, maybe like an Xbox Connect or something as well. So it's pretty simple, and we'll just kind of model something that represents something that could look like that, I guess. It didn't sound right, but something like that. So we're going to go ahead and Shift-D that face, pull it over, and we'll hit P and separate by selection, because we don't want this to be in the array modifier anymore. So we can go ahead and erase the mirror modifier and the Boolean modifier. And then I'm going to extrude this across to be the box where the system is. And then I'll pull that down a bit, somewhere around, just about 2/3 of the height of the speakers probably. And here we're going to do a little bit of modeling to make this look a little bit more interesting. I'm going to go ahead and put a cut there and a cut here off to about this point here. Looks about right. And then I'll take these faces here and extrude them and scale them in a little bit. All right, scale them along the Shift-Z, so we're not scaling along the Z-axis at all. Okay, something like that. And then I'm going to pull it in straight over there, and then pull it in this way a little bit. Just to give it kind of a cool look. You can kind of tweak the faces now a little bit. Kind of a little bit of a stylish look there on the box. And then there's some buttons on the box as well, and some kind of bars and stuff. For that, it's super simple. We just kind of add in like a circle Maybe change the vertices to be less because it's so small that it doesn't need to be so big. Scale it down, rotate 90 degrees along the x-axis, scale it up a bit, kind of place it where you want it, extrude it out then, tabbing into edit mode and choosing vertices select, extrude it out. We can go ahead and pull it along the right axis there, and then extrude it and scale it, and then extrude it and pull it back in. So it's sort of like a dial there that you might be able to change settings with or something. And actually, let's kind of pull it out a little bit and hit face, so it's there's no material there. So there you have it. There's one of the little details. We can go ahead and duplicate a face there. Shift D, pull it up here, pull out, over, scale it down, and extrude it back. So we have some more buttons here, and you can duplicate these and move them however you want for that extra bit of detail. Maybe have one bigger one like a power button, and these can be a little bit smaller. But this is where you guys can kind of just experiment. You can even look up some reference images if you want to get real fancy on a stereo or a Bluetooth player or something, or a Blu-ray player, I should say. But yeah, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. And then I'm going to go ahead and tab into this. Let's grab a face off of it, like this face here. Shift D, scale it down, pull it over, scale it along the X a little bit, and extrude that out as a little extra detail. And that looks pretty nice. So that's like the main box, and then there's kind of another thing on top, which gives it another bit of detail, you could say. So I'm going to go ahead and just duplicate that top face, kind of pull it out, pull it over, scale it a little bit. Okay, scale it along the y-axis a little bit too. Extrude it upwards, sort of like that, and then we'll give it kind of an angled front to it, something like that. And again, there's some buttons along the face here, so you could go ahead and do that. You could also do the same face thing like I did earlier. Maybe put it over on this side just to give it a little bit of variation, a little bit of a disc player or something maybe there. And then let's give it a base. So it kind of has, well, you can have whatever kind of base you want, I guess, because it doesn't really need to be any certain Blu-ray player out there. But I'm just going to go ahead and extrude and scale. And then we'll come down and give it sort of a platform here. And then extrude and scale it up a bit more, like that, and extrude it down. So you have just sort of a little platform for it. Nothing too crazy. But there you have it. Maybe a few more buttons of its own would be nice. So we can grab some of these, Shift D them, pull them up. If we go to side view, you can see how you have to rotate a little bit to match. Just scale them a little bit, and then place them right in there. All right, maybe these would be over on that side. All right, and there you have the sort of stereo Bluetooth thing. Now, the last thing to add a little bit of detail to it is to add some cables kind of running from the TV to the players here. And this is super easy to do with the curve mesh. So go ahead and add mesh, and then down to curve right here. And we'll add a Bezier curve, pull it up a bit. I'm going to go to the curve settings over here. We'll change it to full, and then we'll give it some depth. Something like that. Then we're going to go tab into edit mode, and you see you have your two handles here. I'm going to grab this handle and kind of take it down behind our Bluetooth player here and pull this out so it's not intersecting with our mesh there. And we'll grab this handle, pull it over, rotate it around so it's kind of facing into the back of the TV here, and we can grab it and pull it up there. Something like that looks pretty good. And then just kind of positioning it so you can see some of it in the view a little bit better there. Looks kind of nice. All right, it might be a little bit too thick there. Make it a little smaller. And that looks to be pretty good. We can kind of tweak these a little bit more. But I think I like that sort of spiraling cable coming up from the back there. Let me raise that up just a tad. Cool. And then you could add a few smaller cables as well for audio or whatever, which you might just want to duplicate this, pull it up a bit, give it a skinnier depth, and then maybe these are kind of coming from a different point over here, and then maybe these come like around the back and down. So you can hit Z to kind of see through it. Kind of rotate these around the back side. And rotate this around so it's not intersecting with the pole there. You can double tap R to kind of free rotate it. And voila, you have another little cable running around the back. You can hit 5 now so we can see through and rotate that. Plug it in the back somewhere there. Alright, cool. So that's a little extra details for you guys, but that's looking pretty finished. So you can go ahead and add as much detail as you want, but I'm going to save that and I'm going to move on to the next object, which will be the little shelving unit over here. So for the little shelving piece over here, it's a lot easier with the help of the mirror modifier again. So I'm just going to Shift A, add in a cube. We'll scale it down. I'll hit period on my number pad to zoom in on that cube. Pull it away from the wall here, pull it up. Now I'm going to tab into edit mode so we leave our origin point in the center there and pull everything to the right. Scale it down quite a bit. Maybe scale it along the Y or X axis a little bit to make it a little bit more of a board shape and pull it down. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and add that modifier mirror. Let's make sure it's on the right axis here by changing it from X to Y. And then I'm going to grab that top face and pull it up to be about the approximate height. Let me just check here. Okay, right about to that bar on the door there. Is about right. Okay, so that looks pretty good. And then let's go ahead and hit L and separate it out a little bit more here. Right, that looks about right. Good. And then for the ends here, I kind of beveled them a little bit to make them look a little nicer. So you can grab that face, go Control B, and pull it back. Bevel it a few times by scrolling your mouse wheel. Okay, then you can go ahead and leave that. Same thing on the top. Control B, pull it back, and then you scroll your mouse wheel a few times to add some extra faces in there. That looks good. And then we're going to go ahead and grab a face on the edge here. So I'm just going to Shift D that face. I'm going to scale it down a bit. Not all the way, but just a bit. And then scale it along the Z. So if you see here, we have that face getting nice and small there. Just scale it down a little bit more. And that looks about right. So I'll hit E and extrude it across. Choose clipping on our mirror modifier, and we can attach it in the center there. Cool. So there's our first face there. This is going to be just below the middle of our pole here. And we'll Shift D, add another one down towards the bottom, and then Shift D and add one towards the top here. Now all of these could actually be scaled along the Z a little bit because they're a little bit thick for my liking. So go ahead and scale them along the Z a little bit. All right, that looks pretty good. Now we can go ahead and rotate it against the wall here. So moving over to the side view, rotating it along the Y axis. Rotate it just about so it touches. We can kind of pull it in a little tighter if we don't want quite so much rotation along the Y. And then right about there, pull it in a little tighter. So you can see how that ambient occlusion helps you see when it's actually about touching. And that looks to be about right. So right there is good. And then at any time, we can always pull it in a little tighter if it's a little bit wider than we want. But that's looking good. I'm going to grab that top face here, Shift D, scale along the Z to 0, pull it up a little bit, and then we're going to scale it along the X axis. So this is kind of the shelves now. Scale it out, hit E, and extrude it up a bit. Okay, so we have sort of our short, flat platform there. And that looks pretty nice. Maybe a little thicker. Grab that top face and pull it up a little bit more. Cool. Now I'm going to go Control R. Actually, let's do this in a separate piece because it'll make it easier for the materials. I'm going to Shift D and scale this along the Y. Something like that. Uncheck clipping so I can pull that over to the edge here. Scale it along the Y a little bit more. And extrude it upwards as a little bit of a lip board along the sides here. And then pull it up against the board there. Nice and flush, making it pretty close. Cool. And we can choose clipping again. So now that that's done, we can go ahead and grab that little board and the shelving point. Switch to side view here with number pad 1 and 5, and then Shift D it up on top of that platform as well there. And there you have your little shelving unit. I think it just squeaked. Shelving unit. But that looks pretty nice. I'm happy with that. We can tweak it as much as we'd like, but I think I'll leave it there for now. So now, in the next part, we'll be adding more of the details on the shelving unit here and stuff, and you can add pretty much any little trinket, maybe something you've modeled in a different project, and stick it on here. If you noticed the cowl that was on here, that was actually one of my early projects in Blender that I went ahead and stuck on that shelving unit because I thought it looked kind of cute, and it actually looked semi-decent on it. So yeah, you can go ahead and put whatever you want in the shelving unit there, and just kind of have fun experimenting with different models. Cool. All right, so now on to, let's do some of the round tables here. Okay, so these round tables are pretty easy. We're just going to be using some circles and extruding them up. So go ahead and place your cursor in the general vicinity of the spot that you want your table. Shift A, add in a circle, and we'll go ahead and tell it to fill it with a triangle fan. Okay, pull it up to about the approximate height, and here we'll just scale it up a bit, tab into edit mode, select the outer edge by clicking that, and then alt right clicking the edge, and extrude it upwards. Scale it a little bit, and then we'll go ahead and hit Control 2 to add in a subdivision surface modifier at 2, change it to smooth shading, and then we'll add in the solidify modifier. We can go ahead and adjust the thickness a little bit here. That looks pretty good. And then we're going to play with the crease a little bit to make this a little sharper around the tip here by giving it a 1 on the mean crease. And then this edge here, alt right click it right there. We can kind of tighten that up with a little bit more of a mean crease. Something like a 0.4 I think is good. Alright, and is smooth shading still on? Yes it is. You can give it more or less, maybe a few more for the render, but a few less for the viewport. And then we have our circle tabletop. And then I'm going to go to top view and hit Z so I can see through it. And with my cursor still in the same point there, I'm going to add in another circle. And we'll go ahead and leave it at triangle fan again, scale it down. And then I'm going to tab into edit mode so I can grab it and move it away from that center point, but keeping the origin point at the center there. Something like this. Then I'm going to extrude it upwards by hitting E and extruding it, pulling it upwards to about the approximate height. The whole thing might need to be scaled a little bit and then pulled down again. All right, scale along the Z a little bit more. And it can always be scaled down more. So we're going to go a little bit more than we need and scale it down once we rotate them. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead now and do just that. I'm going to rotate them along the Y-axis or X-axis a bit to get the right amount of angle. Rotate along the X just so you have sort of a nice natural angle on that foot or arm or leg. And then in top view, once you're happy with the angle there, we can grab that edge and double tap G to slide it down to the right point. Although we have to delete the triangle fan, I guess, if you want to do that. So go ahead and delete that. And then alt right click that again, double tap G, pull it down to about the right spot. And then just checking to see if we like the height. And I moved it a little too much there. So double tap G, pull it down a little less. And do we like the height? It looks pretty good. It might end up being a little taller, so we can grab both those and raise them up a little bit more. And like I said, we can always make them shorter. And then I'm going to bevel the bottom foot here. So I'm going to grab that edge loop, Control B, and we'll give it a little bit of a bevel. That looks nice. Maybe even a little bit more of an exaggerated bevel. Control B, pull it in nice and high. Cool. We can pull it down just a little bit so it's on the floor. All right, and then to rotate the rest of these and add 2 more, and tab into edit mode. Actually, yeah, we'll tab into edit mode. So they're all the same object. And now I'm going to hit period, so the cursor is the rotation point. And if I shift D and rotate 120 degrees, we'll place another one over there. And if I shift D and rotate with R 120 degrees, we'll place the other one over there. And they will be evenly placed apart, and that looks to be pretty good. Now, there is kind of a platform that these like plug into, another wooden surface that like the plastic surface is sitting on or something. At least that's how I imagined it. So I'm just going to duplicate this bottom face here on the table, scale along the Shift Z axis a bit, and then extrude it downwards. About so. Okay, and then we can make that a face. And it looks a little messy due to the subsurf modifier, and we don't need this one to be subsurfed, so I can just grab that, hit P, separate it from selection, and delete the modifiers off of it then. And then I can just go ahead and pair it or join it with the legs there. So grab this, then the legs. Make sure it's just those two objects selected by unselecting everything first with A, and then grabbing both of them and hitting Control J. And that looks pretty good. We can go ahead and smooth that as well if we want. In the shading UVs, smooth. Okay, and then it looks like we have to pull this up just a tad to be outside of it. And there's our table. So there's two of these. One is a little bit smaller than the other one. We can just duplicate it for the other one. So let's go ahead and grab that, unselect everything else, rotate it a little bit first, and then Shift D, pull it over here. This one's a little bit smaller. Something like that, and that looks to be pretty good. Maybe scale it up along the Z because it's not necessarily shorter, it's just not as wide in diameter. Alright, cool. Yeah, that should do it. So we can rotate that around. We can change this back to medium point and rotate it around a bit with the legs in a different position just to keep it interesting looking. And there we have it. Now, if the legs are a little too small on this one now, you can grab them all and go Alt Scale and thicken them up a little bit. I think that looks good. Maybe these are actually a little skinny too, so I'll grab those, Alt Scale, and make them a little fatter. Cool. So there's our tables, and then there's just one more that is kind of made of wood and is more square. So I'll show you how to make that one as well. But it's basically the same process. You go up top view, Shift A, add in a cube. It's basically the same process except it's more squared off because it's wood instead of logs. So I'm going to go ahead and scale it along the Y-axis a bit, scale it down, and then tab into edit mode and pull it away from that orange origin point there. Let's go ahead and pull it along the axis so we keep it even. Something like that. Nice. And then we grab that top face there, pull it up to be about the approximate height that we want. And this one can be scaled along the Y because it's kind of pointed. And we'll pull it out a little bit to give it that nice little angle. All right, looks pretty good. And then there's they all kind of come together at the center, at the top here, as kind of a beam to connect the four of them. So we're going to go ahead and just put a cut in there and extrude that out. All right, we can pull it up a little bit. And then grab that top face and that one, scale on with Z to 0. Okay, that looks pretty good. And then there is also another little extra detail here. I'm just going to extrude this upwards, scale it along the Y-axis a little bit, and give it sort of that extra little knob point on top, just for a little character. Cool. So now we can take this and do the same thing we did with the other one, where we Shift D it, make sure we have period selected so it's rotating around the cursor, and then rotate it 120 degrees. And one more time, Shift D, rotate 120 degrees. All right, we can check that now, and that's looking pretty good, except they're a little bit too far from the center. So actually, I'm just going to Control Z that, grab that single one, and pull it all the way up to the cursor point there. We can grab this and scale it along the X to 0. Whoops, scale along the Y to 0. And I actually have two faces here. Yeah, I somehow duplicated that, so I'm just going to grab everything and choose Tools, Remove Doubles, just to clean up the duplicates that I accidentally made. If you ever find that happening, that's your option right there. And then scale along the Y to 0. Awesome. Now that might still be a little too much, so I might pull that back a little bit more still. Something like that, and then grab it all and move it into that cursor point. Now we'll Shift D, rotate 120 degrees, and you can see that's working better. Shift D, rotate 120 degrees. That's more the scale that we want from this object. We can scale it down along the Z-axis a bit. I want to pull all these vertices in the center here up a bit. just so it's, grab that last one there, just so these boards are kind of on an angle here a little bit, like so. And then we're just going to drop in a circular piece of wood here for the center. Something like that. Scale it up a little bit more and extrude it upwards, like so. So kind of an interesting piece of furniture here, but it's actually a thing. Trust me, I've seen it. So we'll grab that bottom edge and that center vertex there, and pull this down to be, well, actually let's grab face select on that bottom edge. Try and get it holding Alt and right clicking. Okay, we can try and get that fan of faces. Alright, I'll just use the top ones because they're easier to select here. And I can't quite seem to get it. Might be easier to just go edge and do that in the center. Okay, make it a little thicker, and then hit L to select everything and pull it down further. Alright, something like that. And then this needs to be subdivided a little bit more. So for this, I'm going to hit P, separate that by selection, so we can grab that and go Control 2 and add in the Subsurf. Let's go ahead and add that crease to the top two faces here, just to finish it off. And it's looking pretty nice. We can choose Smooth Shading. And it looks like we might have to add in another edge here because we're not getting that sharp enough. So we'll just go Control 2 or Control R and add in another edge there. Alright, nice. So I can take this whole thing, tab it in edit mode, scale it a little bit on the Z axis. We can turn off our we can scale this down a little bit with this now. And there we have it. I think I might want to pull up all these faces a little bit as well. I'm just being a little picky here, but might as well. It looks a little bit better when they're up a little higher. And then there's actually another little board that kind of runs between the arms here that I'll quick add because I think it looks nice. So I'll go to top view, tab into edit mode here. Let's just put our cursor in that general area and add in a plane. Scale it down. We're going to rotate it 90 degrees along the x-axis so we can see it here. Let's go ahead and extrude it. So I'm going to hit E and extrude it out to give it a little bit of thickness. Then I'll select it, I'll rotate it, and I'll scale it just to fit it in here where we want it to be. Looking at both these points here, lining it up right between them nicely, rotating, lining them up here and here. Okay, I can change the rest of the scale later. Just want to get the placement in. Alright, that looks pretty good. And I'm just going to grab this face, double tap G to pull it in. Whoop, I want to pull it in this way. Yep, right there. And then we'll scale the whole thing on the Z axis, obviously. So grab it all with L, scale on the Z, and pull it down. Okay, that looks pretty good. The whole thing can come in a bit more now. So I'm going to go ahead and grab G, and I'll pull it to the inside edges there. Alright, pretty nice. We can grab that and double tap G, pull that in, double tap G, and pull that in. And that's all we really need to do. I can go ahead and pull it up a little higher here, a little higher here. So we have that shape. So if we want to rotate this nicer, it has to be a little bit more lined up with the center here. So I'm just going to eyeball it because I'm not concerned with it being exact, but pulling it a little bit up more so it's towards the center of this beam, and towards the center of that beam means that when we shift D it and rotate it 120 now, it'll be more lined up here and there. And that's all that I really care about. As long as it's close, that's fine by me. And you can see that looks pretty close. So there we have it, our nice little chair. Cool. It looks like the normals might be messed up in this a little bit, so I'll go shading UVs, recalculate the normals. Okay, still not fixing it. Maybe it has to do with the mean crease then. Maybe we just want to forget the mean crease here and leave it with the double. Okay, that looks better. So there you have it. It's looking pretty good. We might have to recalculate a few normals on here to make it fix some of those errors. So let's go shading, recalculate. and you might fix some errors with that. And then I think it's actually a little bit beefy, so I'm going to grab this one here, hit L, scale along the x-axis a little bit, and see if I like that better. I think I do. So what I'm going to do is just quickly reduplicate these, grab both those X, delete the vertices, grab this one. Let's first Shift S, cursor to selected, so it's back at that point. Grab this one, hit period, and then Shift D, rotate 120. And again, Shift D, rotate 120. So now we have those a little bit skinnier and looking just a little bit nicer. So that wraps up this little object here. Oh, one thing is we can grab that face down there, Shift A, add in a circle. We can give this less vertices. Whoops. I want to quick go Shift S, cursor to selected, and then Shift A, add in a circle. Give it less vertices, just something like 8. Scale it way down. And this is just a little foot that's on the bottom of this. Really a detail that isn't that necessary, but I'm just scaling it down to be nice and small. But you do actually notice it if there's no gap between that and the floor. So I'm just going to quick do it. So right there, I'm just going to do the same thing with the cursor in the center there. Select it. Shift S, cursor to selected. Select that little circle there. Shift D, rotate 120. Shift D, rotate 120. All right. Now we can grab everything and place it right on the floor. Boom. And we're done. So that's that, and that's looking pretty good. Okay, so we're running a little low on time now, but I'm just going to finish off by doing the little shelving unit over on this wall here that you can see in the background. It's kind of cool, and it's pretty easy, so I'll show you how to do it. So I'm going to grab that face over there, go Shift S, cursor to selected, and then I can hit period and kind of center our camera over there and hit 5 on my number pad. So we're just kind of lined up in the right spot here to start modeling. And now once we're here, we're going to add in a cube. So just Shift A, add in a cube, scale it down, something nice and small, scale it along the x-axis, and scale it along the y-axis. Pull it away from the wall just a little bit, scale on the y a little bit more, and then we'll pull it by hitting tab, and then pull it. So we leave the origin point there, and then I'm going to scale this up along the z-axis a bit, so grab it and scale along the z. So we have kind of our frame there against the wall, and let me quick check my image here. Okay. Now I can go ahead and turn on that mirror modifier to help us save a little time. Move it over there. Perfect. And then it's going to be just duplicating this face, Shift D, scaling it along the z-axis way down. Something like this, nice and skinny like that. As another little metal frame bar, pulling it out. It can be even smaller. And I can change this to medium point now. Grab that top face and make it even smaller. And we'll grab it, pull it down here, about so. And then I'm going to add a little detail with a curve modifier, or not a modifier, but just a curve. But going to side view, hitting 5, and then Shift A, tabbing out of edit mode, of course, hitting Z so I can be in wireframe. Shift A, adding in a curve, a Bezier curve. Rotate it 90 degrees along the y-axis, and then rotate 90 degrees along the y-axis. Whoa, did I just rotate 90 degrees along the y twice? I may have. But just line it up so it's rotated like so, straight across. Tab into edit mode, and let's first change those curve settings a little bit. Depth, then hit T. Nope, we don't need to hit T, we can just go ahead and add full right there. And then hit Z so we can kind of see, alright. Now the depth is going to be a bit smaller, something kind of ornate and fancy like that. And now I'm going to scale this down, place it towards the end of our support beam there, and kind of rotate it out and around. So it's kind of curved like that. And then this one, whoa, I don't want to unselect and just select that face. Scale it down. We're going to pull it up to be towards the bottom of our frame here. And it's just going to be kind of coming out of the wall here. So we can kind of pull it back a bit. We're going to pull this in a bit, place it up here. And then we're going to get kind of a nice sort of, I'm going to look for kind of that bend. So I'm going to pull this back a little bit and just get kind of a nice sort of round bend like that. Okay, that looks pretty good. Pull that in a little bit, just kind of a fancy bend. And then I'm going to extrude this by hitting E, and giving a little bit of a loop around here. So rotate it around, and then this is way too big, so you need to pull it in a lot tighter. Scale this in nice and small, but we have a nice little sort of loopity-loop thing going on there now, and that's just kind of a fancy little detail. All right, so if I tab out of that, move it up a little bit so it's attached, hit period on my keyboard, and then Z and 5, you can see that we have sort of that fancy little detail, adding a little bit more to our scene. Very nice. So now I can go ahead and convert it. So Alt-C, Alt-C, convert from curve, yes, top one, nope, I'm sorry, bottom one, mesh from curve. I always get those two messed up. And we'll just Control-J, parent it to the top here, so it automatically copies it over there. Nice. So you have to be sure that you're happy with the curve before you convert it, because you can no longer change it, but I'm happy with it. So I can go ahead and duplicate it now, move it up to the second shelf. Before I do that, actually, let's go ahead and add the shelf actually to it, so I can duplicate both of them at the same time. I'm just going to duplicate that top face, scale along the X or Y axis a bit, X axis a bit, grab that edge, make sure clipping is on so we can just connect it in the center, pull this out a bit like so, and grab that face and extrude it upwards. A decent amount of thickness, something like a semi-sturdy shelf there is all we need. And there are little things you can do to the curve by going Alt Scale and making it a little fatter if you really wanted to. You can sometimes mess up the geometry doing that a little bit, so I don't recommend doing it a lot. But in this case, I'm going to make it a little fatter by going Alt Scale, Alt S I should say, just with that selected, so hitting L and then scaling it up a little bit more. Okay, that looks good. Tab in edit mode, grab both those, Shift D, and pull them up towards the top. So we have room for some more pots and pans and stuff for details up there. But that's going to do it, guys, for this part of the tutorial. I'm just scaling it a little bit in there. We got some nice details added across our scene, filling it out, making it look even better. There's more that could be done, obviously. I think on this edge, I kind of insetted this a little bit, scaled it along the Z a little bit, kind of gave it a little bit of like a handle-like thing in here by extruding it in, extruding, scaling it down a little bit, and then extruding and pulling it out a little bit more, just to give a little bit of extra detail there. So something like that, even though it doesn't really make too much sense, it could be like a handle that comes out of there, whatever, add some nice detail to it, and we'll make it look more realistic. So with that done, we can kind of see how our scene's coming together, move things around a little bit. I might grab both these objects here and our stereo system here, just grab them all and unselect the background. We need to make sure we unhide those and grab them as well. Pull it over a little bit so you can see a little bit more of the scene. Same with the TV. And then we might end up kind of changing our camera angle a little bit here and rotating it a little bit just so you can see a little bit more of the TV there. Cool. And I can go ahead and hide these again. And that is going to wrap up part 3 of our modern interior tutorial series in Blender. So I hope you guys are having fun with this series. I certainly am. It's definitely a fun project, and I think you guys will be enjoying yourselves. So if you are, leave a like and comment down in the below comment section. But that's going to do it for me, guys, and I'll see you in part 4. Bye!